Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Thud by Terry Pratchett. Part 4. Aimless and hopeless, the troll wandered. His name was Brick, although currently he couldn't remember this. His head ached. It really ached.
It was the scrap that did it. What did they always say? When you sinking to where you was cooking up scrape, you was so low even the cockroaches had to bend down to spitting on you? Last night, what had happening? What bitch did he see? What bitch did he do? What bitch in their thumping, scalding cauldron of his brain were real? The bit with their giant woolly elephants? They probably weren't real. He was pretty sure there weren't any giant woolly elephants in this city, 'cause if there were, he would have seen them before, and there'd be big steaming turds in the streets, and similar. You wouldn't miss him.
He was called Brick because he had been born in the city, and trolls, being made of metamorphorical rock, often take on the nature of the local rocks. His hide was a dirty orange, with a network of horizontal and vertical lines. If Brick stood up close to a wall, he was quite hard to see. But most people didn't see Brick anyway. He was the kind of person whose mere existence is an insult to all decent folk, in their opinion.
That mine with them dwarfs, was that real? You go and find a place to lie down and watch the pretty pictures. Suddenly, you're in this dwarf hole? That couldn't have been real. Only word on the street was that some troll had got into a dwarf hole. Yeah, and everyone was looking for that troll, and not to shake him by their hand. The word said the Brescia wanted to find out real hard, and by the sound of it, they were not happy. Not happy that some dwarf who'd been putting their bad word on the clans was offed by a troll. Were they mad? Actually, it didn't matter if they was mad or not, 'cause they had ways of asking questions that didn't heal for months. So he better keeping out their way. On the other hand, a dwarf wouldn't know one troll from another, right? And no one else had seen him. So act normal, alright? He'd been fine. He'd been fine. Anyway, it couldn't have been him.
It occurred to Brick,
Yeah, that's my name. Knew it all the time.
that he still had a bit of the white powder at the bottom of the bag. All he needed to do now was find a startled pigeon and some alcohol, any alcohol at all, and he'd be fine.
Yeah, fine. Nothing to worry about at all. Yeah.
When Vimes stepped out into the brilliant daylight, the first thing he did was draw a deep breath. The second thing he did was draw his sword, shing, wincing as his sore hand protested. Fresh air. That was the stuff. He'd felt quite dizzy underground, and the tiny cut on his hand itched like mad. He'd better get Igor to take a look at it. You could probably catch anything in the muck down there. Ah, that was better. He could feel himself cooling down. The air down there had made him feel really strange. The crowd was a lot more like a mob now. But he saw at the second glance that it was what he thought of as a plum cake mob. It doesn't take many people to turn a worried, anxious crowd into a mob. A shout here, a shove there, something thrown here, and with care, every hesitant, nervous individual is being drawn into a majority that does not, in fact, exist. Detritus was still standing like a statue, apparently oblivious of the growing din. But Ringfounder, damn, he was arguing hotly with people at the front of the crowd. You never argued. You never got drawn in. "Corporal Ringfounder!" he bellowed. "To me!" The dwarf turned as a half-brick sailed over the heads of the mob and clanged off his helmet. Clang! He went over like a tree. Boom! Detritus moved so fast that he was halfway through the crowd before the dwarf hit the cobbles. His arm dipped into the press of bodies and hauled up a struggling figure. He spun round, thudded back through the gap that hadn't had time to close yet, and was beside Vimes before Ringfounder's helmet had stopped rolling. "Well done, Sergeant," said Vimes out of the corner of his mouth. "Did you have a plan for the next bit?"
"I'm more the tactical kind, sir,"
said Detritus. "Ah, well, at times like this, you didn't argue, and you didn't step back." Vimes pulled out his badge and held it up. "This dwarf is under arrest for assaulting a watch officer," he shouted. "Let us through, in the name of the law!" And to his amazement, the crowd went quiet, like a lot of children when they sense that this time teacher is really, really angry. Perhaps it was the words on the badge, he thought. You couldn't rub them out. In the silence, another half-brick dropped out of the free hand of the dwarf in Detritus's very solid custody. Years later, Vimes would shut his eyes and still be able to recall the crunch it made when it hit the ground. Angua stood up with the unconscious Ringfounder in her arms. "He's concussed," she said, "and I suggest, sir, that you turn round just for a moment." Vimes risked a glance. Ardent, or at least a leather-shrouded dwarf that could have been him, was standing in the shadows of the doorway. He had the attention of the crowd. "We're being allowed to go," he said to Angua, nodding to the figure. "I think the going is the thing, sir. Don't you?" "You've got that right, Sergeant. Detritus, keep a grip on that little bugger. Back to the nick, all of us." The crowd parted to let them through, with barely a murmur. The silence followed them all the way back to the watchhouse, where Otto, Shriek of the Times, was waiting in the street, iconograph at the ready. "Oh, no, you don't, Otto," said Vimes as his squad approached. "I'm standing on the public highway, Mr. Vimes," said Otto meekly. "Smile, please," and took a picture of a troll officer holding a dwarf up in the air.
Oh well, said Vimes to himself. That's page 1 sorted out, and probably the bloody cartoon too.
One dwarf in the cells, one in the tender loving care of Igor, Vimes thought as he trudged up the stairs to his office, and it's only going to get worse. Those dwarves were obeying Ardent, weren't they? What would they have done if the dwarf had shaken his head? He landed in his chair so hard that it rolled back a foot. He'd met deep down dwarves before. They'd been weird, but he'd been able to deal with them. The Low King was a deep downer, and Vimes had got on with him well enough. Once you accepted that the fairy tale dwarf in the Hogfather beard was an astute politician. He was a dwarf with vision. He dealt with the world.
Ha! He'd seen the light.
But those in the new mine, he hadn't seen them, even though they were sitting in a room made brilliant with the light of hundreds of candles. That seemed odd, since the Grags themselves were completely shrouded in their pointy black leather. But maybe it was some mystic ceremony, and who'd look for sense there? Maybe you got a more holy dark in the midst of light. The brighter the light, the blacker the shadow. Ardent had spoken in a language that sounded like dwarfish, and out of the dark hoods had come answers in questions, all barked out in the same harsh, brief syllables. At one point, Vimes was asked to repeat the meat of his statement made up above, which had seemed too far away now. He'd done so, and there'd been a long, drawn-out discussion in what he'd come to think of as deep dwarf. And all the time he felt that eyes he could not see were watching him very hard indeed. It didn't help that his head had been aching like mad, and there were shooting pains going up and down his arm. And that was it. Had they understood him? He didn't know. Ardent had said that they agreed with considerable reluctance. Had they? He hadn't a clue. Not a clue to what had really been said. Would Carrot be given access to a crime scene that had not been interfered with in any way? Vimes grunted. Huh? What do you think, boys and girls? He pinched his nose, and then stared at his right hand. Igor had gone on length about tiny, invisible, biting creatures, and used some vicious ointment that probably killed anything of any size or visibility. It had stung like 7 hells for 5 minutes, but they had gone and seemed to have taken the pain with it. Anyway, what mattered was that the watch was officially on this case. His eye was caught by the top sheet of paperwork in his tray. Footnote 5. Vimes maintained 3 trays. In, out and shake it all about. The last one was where he put everything he was too busy, angry, tired, or bewildered to do anything about. End footnote 5. His eye was caught by the top sheet of paperwork in his in tray. He groaned as he picked it up. To His Grace, Sir Samuel Vimes, Commander of the Watch, from Mr. A. E. Pessimer, Inspector of the Watch, Your Grace. I hope You will not mind giving me as soon as possible the answers to the following questions. 1. What is Corporal Nobby Nobs for? Why do you employ a known petty thief? 2. I timed 2 officers in Broadway earlier, and in the space of 1 hour they made no arrests. Why was this an economic use of their time? 3. The level of violence used by troll officers against troll prisoners appears excessive. Could you please comment upon this? And so on. Vimes read on with his mouth open. All right, the man wasn't a copper. Definitely not. But surely he had a fully functional brain. Oh, good grief. He'd even spotted the monthly discrepancy in the petty cash box. Would A.E. Pessimal understand if Vimes explained that Nobby's services over the years more than made up for the casual petty theft, which you accepted as a kind of mild nuisance? Would that be an economic use of my time? I think not. As he put the paper back in the tray, he spotted a sheet underneath, in Sherry's handwriting. He picked it up and read it. 2 dwarves and 1 troll had handed in their badges that morning, citing family reasons. Damn. That was 7 officers lost this week. Bloody Koom Valley. It got everywhere. Oh, it couldn't be fun. Heavens knew. Being a troll, holding the line against a bunch of your fellow trolls, and defending a dwarf like the late Ham Crusher. It probably wasn't any funnier being a dwarf, hearing that some troll street gang beat up your brother because of what that idiot had said. Some people would be asking, whose side are you on? If you're not for us, you're against us. Huh. If you're not an apple, you're a banana. Carrot came in quietly and placed a plate on the desk. Angua told me all about it, he said. Well done, sir. What do you mean, well done? Said Vimes, looking at his healthy sandwich lunch. I nearly started a war. Ah, but they didn't know you were bluffing. I probably wasn't. Vimes carefully lifted the top of the bacon, lettuce and tomato sandwich and smiled inwardly. Good old Sherry. She knew what a Vimes BLT was all about. It was about having to lift up quite a lot of crispy bacon before you found the miserable, skulking vegetables. You might never notice them at all. I want you to take Angua down there with you again, he said. And, yes, Lance Constable Humpending. Our little Sally. Just the job for a vampire who fortuitously has arrived in the nick of time, eh? Let's see how good she is. Just those 2, sir? Yes. They both have very good night vision, yes? Vimes looked down at his sandwich and mumbled. We can't take any artificial light down there. A murder investigation in the dark, sir? I had no choice, said Vimes hotly. I know a sticking point when I see one, Captain. No artificial light. Well, if they want to play silly buggers, I'm their boy. You know about mines. And both the ladies have got night vision built in. Well, the vampire has. And Angua can practically see with her nose. So that's it. Do the best you can. The
The place is full of those damn glow beetles. They should help. They've got worms, said Carrot. Oh, well, I know some tricks there, sir. Good. They say a big troll did it and ran away. Make of that what you will. There might be some protests about Sally, sir, said Carrot. Why? Will they spot she's a vampire? No, sir, I don't think they... Then don't tell 'em, said Vimes. You're the smelter. It's up to you what tools you use. See this? He waved the report about the 3 officers he was trying not to think of as deserters. Yes, sir. I was meaning to talk to you about that. It might help if we changed the patrols a bit, said Carrot. How do you mean? It would be quite easy to arrange the patrol schedules so that trolls and dwarves don't have to go on the beat together, sir. Some of the lads say they'd be a bit happier if we could... Carrot let the sentence die away in the stony glare. We've never paid any attention to an officer's species when we do the roster, Captain, said Vimes coldly, except for the gnomes, of course. There's your precedent, then, Carrot began. Don't be daft. A typical gnome room is about twice the size of a shoebox, Captain. Look, you can see this idea is nuts. Dangerous nuts, too. We'd have to patrol troll with troll, dwarf with dwarf, and human with human. Not necessarily, sir. Humans could patrol with either of the others. Vimes rocked his chair forward. No, they couldn't! This is not about common sense. This is about fear. If a troll sees a dwarf and a human patrolling together, he'll think, there's the enemy, 2 against 1. Can't you see where this is going? When the copper's in a tight corner and blows his whistle for backup, I don't want him demanding that when it arrives, it's the right damn shape. He calmed down a little, opened his notebook and tossed it onto the desk. And talking of shapes, do you know what this means? I spotted it in the mine, and a dwarf called Helmcleaver scrawled it in some spilt coffee. And you know what? I think he was only half aware that he'd done it. Carrot picked up the notebook and regarded the sketch solemnly for a moment. Mine sign, sir, he said. It means the following dark. And what does that mean? That things are pretty bad down there, sir, said Carrot earnestly. Oh dear. He put the notebook down slowly, as if half afraid that it might explode. Well, there has been a murder, Captain, Vimes pointed out. Yes, sir, but this might mean something worse, sir. Mine sign is a very strange phenomenon. There was a sign like it over the door, only there was just one line, and it was horizontal, Vimes added. Oh, that'd be the long dark rune, sir, said Carrot dismissively. It's just the symbol for a mine, nothing to worry about. But this other one is? Is it anything to do with Grags sitting in a room surrounded by lighted candles? It was always nice to surprise Carrot, and this time he looked amazed. How did you work that out, sir? It's only words, Captain, said Vimes, waving a hand. The following dark doesn't sound good. Time to stay brightly lit, maybe? When I met them, they were surrounded by candles. I thought maybe it was some kind of ceremony. Could be, Carrot agreed carefully. Thank you for this, sir. I'll go prepared. As Carrot reached the door, Vimes added, One thing, Captain. Yes, sir.
Vimes didn't look up from the sandwich, out of which he was daintily separating the fragments of L and the T from the crispy B.
Just remember you're a copper, will you?
He said. Sally knew something was up as soon as she got back into the locker room in her shiny new breastplate and soup bowl helmet. Coppers of various species were standing around trying to look nonchalant. Coppers are never any good at this. They watched as she approached her locker. She opened the door, therefore, with due care. The shelf was full of garlic. Ah, it starts, and so soon too, just as well. She'd been prepared. Here and there behind her she heard the faint coughs and throat clearings of people trying not to laugh, and there was smirking going on. A smirk makes a subtle noise if you're listening for it. She reached into the locker with both hands and pulled out 2 big, fat bulbs. All eyes were on her. All coppers were motionless as she walked slowly around the room. The reek of garlic was strong on one young constable, whose big grin was suddenly caked with nervousness at the corners. He had the look about him of the kind of fool who'd do anything for a giggle. "Excuse me, constable, but what is your name?" she said meekly. "Fitly, miss." "Are these from you?" Sally demanded. She let her canines extend just enough to notice. Only a joke, miss." "Nothing funny about it," said Sally sweetly. "I like garlic. I love garlic. Don't you?" Yeah," said the unhappy Fitly. "Good," said Sally. With a speed that made him flinch, she rammed the bulb into her mouth and bit down heavily. The crunching was the only sound in the locker room, and then she swallowed. "Oh dear, where are my manners, constable?" she said, holding out the other bulb. "This one's yours." Laughter broke out around the room. Coppers are like any other mob. The table's been turned, and this way round it's funnier. It's a bit of a laugh, a bit of fun, no harm done, eh?
Come on, Fitly, said someone. It's only fair she ate hers.
And someone else, as someone always does, began to clap and urge, "Eat! Eat!" Others took it up, encouraged by the fact that Fitly had gone bright red. "Eat! Eat! 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 Eat!" A man without an option, Fitly grabbed the bulb, forced it into his mouth and bit it hard, to the accompaniment of cheers. "Hey!" A moment later, Sally saw his eyes widen. "Lance Constable Humpending!" She turned. A young man of godlike proportions. Footnote 6. The better class of gods, anyway, not the ones with the tentacles, obviously. End footnote 6. "Lance Constable Humpending!" She turned. A young man of godlike proportions was standing in the doorway. Unlike the armor of the other officers, his breastplate shone, and the chainmail was quite devoid of rust. "Everything all right?" The officer glanced at Fitly, who dropped to his knees and was coughing garlic across the room. But somehow quite failed to see him. Fine, sir," said Sally, puzzled, as Fitly began to throw up. "We've met already. Everyone calls me Captain Carrot. Come with me, please." Out in the main office, Carrot stopped and turned. "All right, Lance Constable. You had a bulb already prepared, right? Don't look like that. There's a vegetable barrow out in the square today. It's not hard to work out." Sergeant Angua did warn me. "So?" "So I carved the garlic out of a radish, sir." "And the one you gave Fitly?" "Oh, that was a carved radish too. I try not to touch garlic, sir," said Sally. Oh, gods, this one really was attractive. "Really? Just a radish? He seemed to take it badly," said Carrot. "I put a few fresh chili seeds in it," Sally added. "About 30, I think." "Oh, why did you do that?" "Oh, you know, sir," said Sally, radiating innocence. "A bit of a laugh, a bit of fun, no harm done, eh?" The captain appeared to consider this. "We'll leave it at that then," he said. "Now, Lance Corporal, have you ever seen a dead body?" Sally waited to see if he was serious. Apparently he was. "Strictly speaking, no, sir," she said. Vimes fretted through the afternoon. There was, of course, the paperwork. There was always the paperwork. The trays were only the start. Heaps of it were ranged accusingly along one wall and gently merging. Footnote 7. Vimes had got around to a clean desk policy. It was a clean floor strategy that eluded him at the moment. End footnote 7. The trays were only the start. Heaps of it were ranged accusingly along one wall and gently merging. He knew that he had to do it. Warrants, dockets, watch orders, signatures. That was what made the watch a police force, rather than just a bunch of rather rough fellows with inquisitive habits. Paperwork. You had to have lots of it, and it had to be signed by him. He signed the arrests book, the occurrences book, even the lost property book. Lost property book? They'd never had one of those in the old days. If someone turned up complaining that they'd lost some small item, you just held knob and knobs upside down and sorted through what dropped out. But he didn't know 2/3 of the coppers he employed now. Not know in the sense of knowing, when they'd stand and when they'd run, knowing the little giveaways that'd tell him when they were lying or scared witless. It wasn't really his watch anymore. It was the city's watch. He just ran it. He went through the station sergeant's reports, the watch officer's reports, the sick reports, the disciplinary reports, the petty cash reports. Duddle-dum, duddle-dum, duddle! Vimes slammed the gooseberry down on the desk and picked up the small loaf of dwarf bread that for the last few years he'd used as a paperweight. "Switch off or die," he growled. "Now, I can see you're slightly upset," said the imp, looking up at the looming loaf. "But could I ask you to look at things from my point of view? This is my job. This is what I am. I am, therefore I think. And I think we could get along famously if you would only read the Please, no, I really could help you!" Vimes hesitated in mid-thump and then carefully put down the loaf. "How?" he said. "You've been adding up the numbers wrong," said the imp. "You don't always carry the tens." "And how would you know that?" Vimes demanded. "You mutter to yourself," said the imp. "You eavesdrop on me? It's my job. I can't switch my ears off. I have to listen. That's how I know about the appointments. Vimes picked up the petty cash report and glanced at the messy columns of figures. He prided himself on what he had, since infancy, called sums. Yes, he knew he plodded a bit, but he got there in the end. You think you could do better, he said. Let me out and give me a pencil, said the imp. Vimes shrugged. It had been a strange day after all. He opened the little cage door. The imp was a very pale green and translucent, a creature made out of little more than coloured air, but it was able to grip the tiny pencil stub. It ran up and down the column of figures in the petty cash book, and Vimes was pleased to hear it muttered to itself. It's out by $3.05, it reported after a few seconds. That's fine then, said Vimes. But the money is not accounted for. Oh, yes it is, said Vimes. It was stolen by Nobby Nobbs. It always is. He never steals more than $4.50. Would you like me to make an appointment for a disciplinary interview? Said the imp hopefully. Of course not. I'm signing it off now. Thank you. Can you add up the other dockets? The imp beamed. Absolutely! Vimes left it scribbling happily and walked over to the window. They don't acknowledge our law, and they undermine our city. That's not just a bunch of deep downers here to keep their fellow dwarves on the straight and narrow. How far do those tunnels go? Dwarves dig like crazy. But why here? What are they looking for? As sure as any hell you choose, there's no treasure trove under the city, no sleeping dragon, no secret kingdom. There's just water and mud and darkness. How far do they go? How much? Hold on. We know this. We know this, don't we? We know about numbers and figures in today's watch. Imp, he said, turning round. Yes, insert name here. You see that big pile of paper in the corner, said Vimes, pointing. Somewhere in there are the gate guard reports for the past 6 months. Can you compare them with last week's? Can you compare the number of dunny wagons leaving the city? Dunny wagon not found in root dictionary. Searching slang dictionary. Meep, meep, meep. Dunny wagon. Noun. Cart for carrying night soil. Parentheses. See also honey wagon. Treacle wagon. Wagon. Midnight special. Gong. End variants, said the imp. That's right, said Vimes, who hadn't heard the midnight special one before. Can you? Oh, yes, said the imp. Thank you for using the Disorganizer Mark V Gooseberry, the most advanced. Yeah, don't mention it. Just look at the ones for the Hub Ward's gate. That's closest to Treacle Street. Then I suggest you stand back, insert name here, said the imp. Why? The imp leapt into the pile. There were some rustling noises. A couple of mice scampered up, and the pile exploded. Vimes backed away hurriedly as papers fountained into the air, borne aloft on a very pale green cloud. Vimes had instigated record keeping at the gates, not because he had a huge interest in the results, but because it kept the lads on their toes. It wasn't as if it was a security duty. Ankh-Morpork was so wide open it was gaping, but the cart census was handy. It stopped watchmen falling asleep at their posts, and it gave them an excuse to be nosy. You had to move soil. That was it. This was a city. If you were a long way from the river, the only way to do that was on a cart. Blast it, he thought. I should have asked the thing to see if there's been any increase in stone and timber loads too. Once you've dug a hole in mud, you've got to keep it open. The circling, swooping papers snapped back into piles. The green haze shrank with a faint zip noise, and there was the little imp ready to explode with pride. An extra 1.1 dunny carts a night over 6 months ago, it announced. Thank you, insert name here. Cogito ergo sum, insert name here. I exist, therefore I do sums. Right, yes, thank you, said Vimes. A bit more than 1 cart a night. They held a couple of tons maximum. You couldn't make much of that. Maybe people living near that gate had been really ill lately. But what would he do in the dwarves' position? He damn well wouldn't send stuff out of the nearest gate, that's what. Ye gods. If they were tunneling in enough places, they could dump it anywhere. Imp, could you? Vimes paused. Look, don't you have some kind of a name? Name? Insert name here? Said the imp, looking puzzled. Oh, no. I am created by the dozen. Insert name here. A name would be a bit stupid, really. I'll call you Gooseberry, then. So, Gooseberry, can you give me the same figures for every city gate, and also the numbers of timber and stone carts? It will take some time, insert name here, but yes, I should love to. And while you're about it, see if there were any reports of subsidence. Walls falling down, houses cracking, that sort of thing. Certainly, insert name here. You can rely on me, insert name here. Snap to it then. Yes, insert name here. Thank you, insert name here. I think much better outside the box, insert name here. Zip! Papers started to fly. Well, who'd have thought it? Vimes wondered. Maybe the damn thing could be useful after all. The speaking tube whistled. He unhooked it and said, Vimes. I've got the evening edition of the Times, sir, said the distant voice of Sergeant Littlebottom. She sounded worried. Fine, send it up. And there's a couple of people here who want to see you, sir. Now there was a guarded tone to her voice. And they can hear you, said Vimes. That's right, sir. Trolls. They insist on seeing you personally. They say they have a message for you. Do they look like trouble? Every inch, sir. I'm coming down. Vimes hung up the tube. Click. Trolls with a message. It was unlikely to be an invitation to the literary lunch. Gooseberry, he said. Once again, the faint green blur coalesced into the beaming imp. Coalesced, to grow together, to unite into a whole, fuse, coalesce. Once again, the faint green blur coalesced into the beaming imp. Found the figures, insert name here. Just working on them, it said, and saluted. Good, but get back in the box, will you? We're going out. Certainly, insert name here. Thank you for choosing the... Vimes pushed the box into his pocket and went downstairs. The main office included not only the duty officer's desk, but also half a dozen smaller ones where watchmen sat when they had to do the really tricky parts of police work, like punctuating a sentence correctly. A lot of rooms and corridors opened onto it. A useful result of all this was that any action there attracted a lot of attention very quickly. If the two trolls very conspicuously in the middle of the room had intended trouble, they'd picked a bad time. It was between shifts. Currently, they were trying, without success, to swagger whilst standing still, watched with deep suspicion by 7 or 8 officers of various shapes. They'd brought it on themselves. They were bad trolls. At least they'd liked everyone to think so. But they'd got it wrong. Vimes had seen bad trolls, and these didn't come close. They'd tried. Oh, they'd tried. Lichen covered their heads and shoulders. Clan graffiti adorned their bodies. One of them had even had his arm carved, which must have hurt, for that stone cool troll look. Since wearing the traditional belt of human or dwarf skulls would have resulted in the wearer's heels leaving a groove all the way to the nearest nick, and monkey skulls left the wearer liable to ambush by dwarves with no grounding in forensic anthropology, these trolls, Vimes grinned, these boys had done the best they could with, oh dear, sheep and goat skulls. Well done, boys. That's really scary. It was depressing. The old-time bad trolls didn't bother with all that stuff. They just beat you over the head with your own arm until you got the message. Well, gentlemen, he said, I'm Vimes. The trolls exchanged glances through the mats of lichen, and one of them lost.
Midur, cry so praise. He wanna see you, he said sulkily.
Is that so? He said.
He wanna see you now, said the troll.
Well, he knows where I live, said Vimes.
Yeah, he does.
3 words, smacking into the silence like lead. It was the way the troll said them. A suicidal kind of way. The silence was broken by the steely sound of bolts being shot home, followed by a click. The trolls turned. Sergeant Detritus was taking the key out of the lock of the watchhouse's big, thick double doors. Then he turned round and his heavy hands landed on the trolls' shoulders. He sighed.
Boys,
he said.
If there was a PhD in being thick, yous wouldn't be able to find a pencil.
The troll who'd uttered the not very veiled threat then made another mistake. It must have been terror that moved his arms, or dumb machismo. Surely no one with a functioning brain cell would have selected that moment to move their arm into what, for trolls, was the attack position. Detritus's fist moved in a blur, and the crack as it connected with the troll's skull made the furniture rattle. Vimes opened his mouth and shut it again. Trollish was a very physical language, and you had to respect cultural traditions, didn't you? It wasn't only dwarves who were allowed to have them, was it? Besides, you couldn't crack a troll's skull even with a hammer and chisel. And he threatened your family, his hind brain added. He had it coming. There was a twinge of pain from the wound on his hand, echoed by the stab of a headache. Oh, hells. And Igor said the stuff would work. The stricken troll rocked for a second or two, and then went over forwards in one rigid movement. Detritus walked across to Vimes, kicking the recumbent figure en passant. En passant. In passing. En passant. Detritus walked across to Vimes, kicking the recumbent figure en passant.
Sorry about that, sir,
he said, and his hand clanged on his helmet as he saluted.
Kang! They got no manners.
All right, that's enough, said Vimes, and addressed the remaining, suddenly very alone messenger. Why does Chrysoprase want to see me?
He wouldn't tell the brothers Fit that, would he?
Said Detritus, grinning horribly. There was no swagger left now.
All I know is, it's about the killing of the Horug,
mumbled the messenger, taking refuge in surliness. At the sound of the word, the eyes of every watching dwarf narrowed further. It was a very bad word.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh...
Detritus hesitated. Boy, said Vimes out of the corner of his mouth.
Boy,
said Detritus triumphantly.
You are making friends like nobody's business today.
Where's the meeting? Said Vimes. Der Pork Futures Warehouse, said the troll. You is to come alone. He paused, awareness of his position dawning on him, and added, if you don't mind. Go and tell your boss I might choose to wander that way, will you? Said Vimes. Now get out of here. Let him out, Sergeant.
And take your rubbish home with you,
Detritus roared. He slammed the doors behind the troll, bent under the weight of his fallen comrade. Okay, said Vimes, as tensions relaxed. You heard the troll. A good citizen wants to help the watch. I'll go and see what he's got to. His eye caught the front page of the Times, spread out on the desk. Oh, hell, he thought wearily. There we are, at a time like this, with a troll officer holding a dwarf with his feet off the ground. It's a good picture of Detritus, sir, said Sergeant Littlebottom nervously. The long arm of the law, Vimes read aloud. Is that supposed to be funny? Probably it is to people who write headlines, said Sherry. Ham Crusher murdered, Vimes read. Watch investigating. Where did they get this? He said aloud. Who tells them? Pretty soon I'll have to read the Times to find out what I'm doing today. He flung the paper back on the desk. Anything important I need to know about right now? Sergeant Cullen says there's been a robbery at the Royal, Sherry began, but Vimes waved that away. More important than robberies, I mean, he said. Another 2 officers have quit since I sent you that note, sir, said Sherry. Corporal Ringfounder and Constable Schist at Chitterling Street. Both say it's for, personal reasons, sir.
Schist was a good officer,
Detritus rumbled, shaking his head. Sounds like he decided to be a good troll instead, said Vimes. He was aware of a stirring behind him. He still had an audience. Oh well, time for the speech. I know it's hard for dwarf and troll officers right now, he said to the room at large. I know that giving one of your own kind a tap with your truncheon because he's trying to kick you in the fork might feel like you're siding with the enemy. It's no fun for humans either, but it's worse for you. The badge seems a bit heavy now, right? You see your people looking at you and wondering whose side you're on, yes? Well, you're on the side of the people, which is where the law ought to be. All the people. I mean, who are out there beyond the mob, who are fearful and puzzled and scared to go out at night. Now, funnily enough, the idiots who are out there right in front of you, getting their self-defense in first, are also the people. But since they don't seem to remember that, well, you're doing them a favour by cooling them off a bit. Hold on to that and hold together. You think that you should stay at home to make sure your old mum is okay. What good would you be against the mob? Together we can stop things going that far. This'll go its course. I know we're all being run ragged, but right now I need everyone I can get. And in return, there will be jam tomorrow and free beer too. Maybe I'll even be a little blind when I'm signing the overtime dockets. Who knows? Got it? But I want you all, whatever, whoever you are, to know this. I've got no patience with idiots who drag a grudge across 500 miles in 1,000 years. This is Ankh-Morpork. It's not Koom Valley. You know it's going to be a bad night tonight. Well, I'll be on duty. If you are too, then I want to know that I can depend on you to watch my back as I'll watch yours. If I can't depend on you, I don't want to see you near me. Any questions? There was an embarrassed silence, as there always is on such occasions. Then a hand went up. It belonged to a dwarf.
Is it true a troll killed the grog?
He asked. There was a murmuring from the watchman. And he went on a little less timorously.
Well, he did ask.
Timorous, of a timid disposition, fearful. Timorous, expressing or suggesting timidity.
Is it true a troll killed the grog?
He asked. There was a murmuring from the watchman, and he went on a little less timorously.
Well, he did ask.
Captain Carrot is investigating, said Vimes. At the moment, we are still in the dark, but if indeed there has been a murder, then I will see that the murderer is brought to justice, no matter what size they are, what shape they are, who they are, or where they may be. You have my guarantee on that. My personal guarantee. Is that acceptable? The general change in the atmosphere indicated that it was so. Good, he said. Now get out there and be coppers. Go on! The room emptied of all except those still labouring over the knotty problem of where they should put the comma.
Permission to speak freely, sir?
Said Detritus, knuckling closer. Vimes stared at him. When I first met you, you were chained to a wall like a watchdog and didn't speak much beyond a grunt, he thought. Truly, the leopard can change his shorts. Yes, of course, he said.
You ain't serious, are you? You're not going running after a coprolite like Christ so praised, sir?
What's the worst he can do to me?
Rip off your head, grind you to mince, and make soup from your bones, sir?
Said Detritus promptly.
And if you was a troll, he'd have all your teeth knocked out and make cufflinks out of 'em.
Why'd he choose to do that now? Do you think he's looking for a war with us? That's not his way. He's hardly going to kill me by appointment, is he? He wants to talk to me. It's got to be to do with the case. He might know something. I don't dare not go, but I want you along. Scrounge up a squad, will you? A squad would be sensible, he admitted to himself. The streets were just too nervous at the moment. He compromised with Detritus and a scratch band of whoever was doing nothing at the moment. That was one thing you could say about the watch. It was representative. If you based your politics on what other people looked like, then you couldn't claim the watch was on the side of any shape. That was worth hanging on to. It seemed quieter outside. Not so many people on the streets as usual. That wasn't a good sign. Ankh-Morpork could feel trouble ahead, like spiders could feel tomorrow's rain.